Welcome to Jim Apologetics. This is, of course, your host, Jim. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Any comments, inquiries, or video topic suggestions and ideas, please leave in the comment section, and I will get to them in a future video if I can. Today, we'll be dealing with Adam Green. For those unaware, Adam Green is a conspiracy theorist, bit of a LARP pagan, and an agnostic who has a problem with my Yehudi cousins, you guessed it. He believes that Christianity is a Jewish trick, which was invented by the Jews in order to destroy Europe and destroy Europeans for generations to come. Today I'll be refuting all of his ideas, I'll be destroying his ideology, and answering most of the basic argumentation tactics that he uses. It's only been about 2,000 years since the Jews hatched this plan, so I'm sure Adam can wait another 15 to 20 minutes for me to debunk his ideology. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. So the way the rest of this video will work is I'll discuss some of Adam Green's issues, and then I'll show you some of his argumentation or the examples he uses to point out his grand Jewish conspiracy. We're going to start off with part of a debate that was held on the Crucible between Adam Green and David Patrick Harry. I will critique it, and then I will show you some examples of rabbis hosted on his Twitter page, none of whom agree with each other whatsoever, big surprise. They kind of debunk his entire idea of a conspiracy that's been going on for hundreds or thousands of years. So, enjoy.
Do you believe in Darwinian Theory of evolution? I do, yeah. I think it's a much better explanation. Can I answer? It's a much better explanation. Much better explanation than the non-explanation from the Genesis, that God just poofed it into existence. That's actually creating a more complex question, because you have to answer, where did God from? And don't. No, you don't, because God by definition doesn't have a beginning or it wouldn't be God.
Actually, it's not just because he's God, although David Patrick Harry's on the right train here. The reason that the Bible doesn't have to account for where did God come from is precisely because it doesn't talk about where God comes from. If you think that's circular logic, let me explain. In Kaufman's book on why the religion of the Israelites is different from any other religion in the world, or how it differentiates from the pagan religions around it, the religion of the Bible is the only one that believes that God has always been, will always be, there was never a time without God, God did not come from anywhere, there was no greater God that gave us God, and there was no cosmic force that then gave us the realization of this God's consciousness, who then decided to create and be the deity of the universe. All other pagan religions believe that there were a set of gods, but they came from another set of gods, and those sets of gods, the grander gods, came from either nothing or from nature or from the cosmic energy. The Bible is the only book that says God has always been, God will always be, there was never a time without God, there was never a beginning and then God showed up. There was never somebody before God, and there was no place that God came from. God has always been, God will always exist, and this is what makes the biblical religion different to the surrounding pagan religions. You can read Kaufman's book on it, which I will link in the description of this video.
That's a category.
You gotta let him answer, Patrick. You gotta let him answer.
It's a category.
Go ahead. Go. You gotta let him answer, though. Go ahead, Adam.
Can you just answer me? Do you believe literally in the Old Testament, in all these stories that I listed in the beginning? Do you believe all those things literally?
It's a category here, brother.
Dude, you can't answer yes or no. That's very.
I'm not here to
pitiful.
argue. I believe what the Eastern Orthodox Church teaches. If you want to know my beliefs on anything in text, refer back to the Eastern Orthodox Church. That's not the debate here.
Dude, get off your knees, stop worshiping the God of Israel, and start thinking for yourself. Don't act like a sheep.
You can't think for yourself, bro. It's embarrassing.
Actually, Adam, wouldn't it be more of a sheep growing up in the West to not believe in the God of the Bible? Because the surrounding media and the surrounding culture that we live in, pervasive as it is, teaches us not to respect religion. Especially Westerners and people coming from Christian backgrounds, their beliefs are not respected. So to be a sheep would be to follow along that and live a secular, degenerate lifestyle. Really should change his channel to No More Jews. I'm starting to wonder.
You can't even prove an objective epistemology. And it's sad, dude.
You can only prove something if you claim to have a God to prove it. No, it's
you can have any God. You can be panpsychic. You don't even have to be a Christian to use the tag argument or to have a basis for your objective morality, dude. You don't have to be a Christian. The fact is that you're just so low IQ, you don't know what I'm saying, dude, and you think that I'm saying you have to believe in the Christian God. That's not what I'm saying, dude.
You're simping like a sheep slave for a foreign God that's just
according to what morality? According to what objective truth?
Okay, all gods are foreign gods by that logic, because as Adam will find out later in this refutation, the Jews actually invented the concept of the nation state. The Israelites were the first and only true nation state. So there is no nation state before the kingdom of Israel. And because there's no nation state and no concept of a people bound by blood and genetics and honor and ancestry and lineage, then there's no justification for any one people to exist outside of an empire or a loose collection of tribes. Therefore, you can go back far enough and nobody has a local god, because nobody is local, because nobody is a 100% pure Englishman or 100% pure German, because these ethno-state concepts didn't exist more than a few hundred years ago. So actually, Adam will find out later in my refutation that holding on to ethno-nationalism is as Jewish as you can get.
They get stuck and they don't go anywhere because you can never move past and actually address what's in the Bible. This is sad. I feel disappointed for everybody that
I would love to debate with Adam Green on addressing exactly what's in the Bible without appealing to oral tradition.
Told to come watch this. This is pathetic.
I know, because they're seeing that you can't even account for an objective claim.
Is this coherent? Is it coherent that God, in order to forgive sins...
Coherency has to do with the justification of the metaphysicals and the transcendentals. Did you not listen to my opening statement? We're dealing with logic here.
This is not coherent. The idea that God has to sacrifice a scapegoat atonement sacrifice.
Okay.
This would be like me cheating on my wife and saying, oh, I'm going to kill the dog to atone...
No. God invented these divine laws in the Torah so that the Israelites would have a way of accounting for their own sin. Okay? So the Israelites need a way to account for their sin, otherwise the punishment for sin is death. If there was no system of atonement, God would have to just wipe out the Israelites every time they sin. That would become redundant after a while, and nobody would ever learn their lesson because they would die, start over, new people. Hey, I've never sinned before. I'm going to sin. Oh, you die, and then the next person. So because those are the laws for sin, death penalty, the atonement is to put the animal sacrifice in your place, so that instead of God killing you, he accepts this atonement on your behalf. You say, well, Jim, Adam, etc., why do we even need this system? Why can't God just forgive the sins? That's the exact problem. If God just forgives the sins without any atonement, then anybody can sin and do whatever they want. And there's no punishment. There's no punishment to fit the crime. So God does punish for sins, and atonement is one of the ways that you avoid the death penalty. If there was no punishment for sin, especially in the time of the Israelites, who were just building up their theocracy, which God was watching, as they were surrounded by pagan nations, and he says, sin all you want, I'm going to tell you not to sin, but if you do sin, I'm not going to punish you. What's the logic there, Adam? How do people learn anything if there's never any punishment for sin? You say, well, when they get to heaven, the Old Testament Jews didn't even have a concept that was very fleshed out about what happened in the afterlife. They had the grave, they had the pit, they had the realm of death. They weren't thinking about eternal justification, right? The Mosaic Law had nothing to do with eternal salvation. The Sinaitic Covenant is not about eternal salvation. So that is why there's atonement. You say, well, why did Jesus have to atone? Jesus stepped in place of all of the animal sacrifice atonements and ended that entire system, as did the entire temple system come to a crashing halt no less than a couple decades after Christ ascended and the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. So Christ took the place of the atonement. Why do we need the atonement? Because we need some kind of a punishment. Well, why doesn't he just punish people? Because then they'd all be dead, including you and me. So there is atonement. So why don't we sacrifice the animals today? Because Christ was that atonement. And that is the reason for all of these things, which seem very convoluted if you try to explain them in only 2.3 seconds. But you have to realize the Bible is theology that develops over thousands of years. It was not all revealed in one day. There are thousands of years of theology, things that happen, covenants that end, covenants that begin. You have to understand these things when discussing the Bible. Here is Adam Green's Twitter page. Ooh, Strong Europe. I'll destroy that in about 10 minutes. Let's look at this rabbi first, all right? Mr. I think Isaac Mizrahi is the name of this rabbi.
How can I not be happy when I see millions of goyim bow down to one Jew tonight?
When I see millions of goyim bow down to one Jew tonight. I want their blood. What a moron. So, for those unaware, this is Rabbi Mizrahi. He has a massive problem with Islam. He's usually debating Islam. He doesn't really care for Christianity. He obviously doesn't like it, and he doesn't like Christ. He won't even say Jesus Christ. He'll say JC. So he's not a fan of Jesus at all. And this is my whole problem with Adam Green's conspiracy theory, is that none of these rabbis are going to make sense together. So remember this. Rabbi Mizrahi thinks that Islam is false, and he debates Islam day to day all the time. He is coping here, as all the other rabbis you will see do, by pretending like they have had a great victory over the European people. If you look down here, for example, the Jews should celebrate Christmas as a Torah victory over paganism. Where was that perspective in the last 2,000 years, Adam? If this was a Jewish conspiracy, why then was Christmas not celebrated by Jews in the first century when it showed up? Or how about a few centuries later? When the Jews were in ghettos in France and Italy and Germany, they were living in slums in Poland and suffering from pogroms in Russia and all those other places, why didn't they go, hey, you know what? At least we have Christmas, which was a Torah victory over paganism. It is clear that J-Post and other liberal Jewish sites and rabbis as a whole are trying to refit the narrative of history so that it looks like Christianity was this useful tool that helped to destroy Europe, Edom, for them. You're going to see how this conspiracy falls flat on its face and actually contradicts itself very, very easily. Let's skip a little down here. Kabbalah, Jesus, no. The Bible is very against those kind of metaphysics, and this was invented like hundreds of years after the Second Temple. So that guy's insufferable. We're not going to watch him. Here we go. Okay, here. First, we'll look at this one really quick. Rabbi explains what's going on in France.
You're going to need the iron of Esav, which represents Edom, which is the West, Europe, and the Americas.
Okay, so Edom for him is the West, Europe, and the Americas. Remember that.
To get intermixed with Ishmael, which is basically Arabs and Muslims.
I just want to point out, this dude looks like a Bedouin caravan robber, and he's saying, oh, we got to intermix with those Arabs. So you're cut from the same cloth, my man.
How in the world was this ever going to happen if not for this refugee crisis? At the end of days, you're going to have this intermixing between Esav, Edom, which is the West, and the East, which is the Muslims and the Arabs, making this through this influx into the world. They're going to have a far larger
4chan in 2016, anyone?
Birth rate than the indigenous people there, and they're going to sort of conquer by number. And there are many different sources for this, where there will be many, many people killed as well.
Now remember what this rabbi says here. According to this rabbi, Europe and the West is Edom. How about this guy?
Became the Roman Empire, which metamorphosed.
Metamorphosized. Why don't you take a break from the Hebrew and learn some English first?
Into the Christian Empire.
I do want to point out that for the first 700, 800, or even 900 years of Christianity, about half the population of Christendom lived in North Africa and the Middle East, so it's inaccurate to say Christianity showed up in Europe and became a white man's religion overnight. That's not true, and also there was no concept of white or not being white at that time period anyway, because they all lived via a multicultural Roman Empire, and nobody said, I'm more pale than you, therefore I'm of a different race. Nobody cared about races at that time. And there's not some liberal argument. I'm just trying to be honest. The Roman Empire was very multicultural, so there was no really distinction between a Carthaginian, a Libyan, and someone from the south of Italy. They were all considered to be Romans of slightly different backgrounds. And again, even until the year 1100, the Syriac Orthodox Church had the same number of participants in the Middle East as did Christians in what is now France. So it's inaccurate to say that this is an Aryan only Indo-European religion and the poor oppressed Semites never had to deal with Christianity. It's not true.
Which became Christian civilization, which is now represented by the United States of America, will suffer a crushing, humiliating defeat.
Okay, so Christianity is Edom, according to this rabbi. But hold on a second. The rabbi above, the Bedouin caravan robber, said the West is Edom. But Christianity is a religion that is 75% non-Western. So which one is it? Secondly, if the Jews invented Christ and they invented the New Testament, then why is Christianity Edom? Adam, why is Christianity the enemy if that is the religion they invented? So you have some Jews on one side saying, yeah, Jesus is our guy. They're bowing to a Jew. We have millions of goyim. Like Mr. Mizrahi, that rabbi. But then you have other rabbis, as just shown, where no, Christianity is the enemy. Christianity is Edom. I would actually consider the latter to be a lot more historically accurate. You know, the Jews did see Christianity as Edom. They saw that entire religion as the enemy. Why would they invent a religion that caused them more suffering, more pain, more warfare, more destruction than any pagan religion ever had? Christianity annihilated Judaism multiple times, almost to the brink of extinction. The Shoah, the pogroms, the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, even though done by Roman pagans, those people within a couple of generations would all become Christians. So this theology is invented by the Jews, according to Adam Green. and then it backfires completely because it becomes their greatest enemy, and then they call it their greatest enemy. So which one is it? Is Edom Christianity, or is Edom pre-Christian Europe, which they have to infect with Christianity? I need to get this story straight, Adam. Which one is it? Here we go. Adam Green. He didn't even change his name on here. I've already massacred Tovia Singer.
Represent today and what will happen to them in the end times.
Oh, so that's really easy. So Edom is Christendom.
I thought Edom was the West, according to the Bedouin caravan robber rabbi. So which one is it? Is Edom the indigenous people of the West as a people, and they happen to have the symptom of Christianity, which you, the Jews, superimposed on them? Or is Christianity this evil religion called Edom, according to Rabbi Tovia Singer and the previous rabbi we watched, and Christianity is the enemy that needs to be wiped out? Because if you ask Rabbi Tovia Singer, he will not say what Rabbi Mizrahi said earlier. He's not going to run around saying, we have millions of goyim bowing down to a Jew. He will say Jesus was not even a true Jew. He will say that Paul was not a true Jew. He will say the New Testament writers were not true Jews and that they bastardized the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. That is what Tovia Singer will say. So he's putting all these rabbis on this page, and none of them agree with each other. You ever heard you ever heard that saying? Like, you ask a Jew, you ask two Jews a question, and you get 5 answers. This is exactly what I'm talking about.
It is the implacable enemy of the Jewish people.
Christianity is the implacable enemy of the Jewish people. So, unfortunately, Mizrahi seems to be just coping because he hangs out with Muslims all day, and he thinks he's had a Torah victory over paganism with Christmas. Then put up a Christmas tree. How come none of these guys will put up a Christmas tree?
The concept of Esav as Edom and as Rome was changed, transformed into a religion.
A religion, so it's not a people. Because the other rabbis and Adam Green would have us believe that Edom is the West, the indigenous, free-spirited pagans of the West, and that Christianity was the weapon that the Jews used against the West. But here this rabbi is saying, no, Edom is a religion. It's not a people anymore. It's a religion. It's Christianity. Well, even if you wiped out European Christianity, Christianity would still be the predominant religion in the New World, half of the continent of Africa, large parts of Oceania, and Southeast Asia. So what are they going to do then? They have to run around the world destroying Christianity there too? It is clear that Christianity is Edom in there. As you all saw in my commentary and in the videos of rabbis that he posted, none of the rabbis seem to agree with each other. Some of them say that Edom is the indigenous people of the West, or that's the implication that Adam Green is giving. That's the implication that the caravan robber rabbi gave as well. But then when we go to the rest of them, such as Rabbi Tovia Singer and some of the people who follow him in that video, they seem to state that Edom is actually Christianity, the religion. I wonder if you had Rabbi Mizrahi and Rabbi Tovia Singer in the same room, would they agree that Jesus is a net benefit to all of Judaism? Because millions of goyim, as they stated, are worshipping and falling down before a Jew? I don't think they would agree at all. If anyone is even remotely familiar with Tovia Singer's material, he detests Christianity, doesn't consider it Jewish at all, and spends his whole life trying to destroy it. So he would not do that if he thought, oh, this is a net positive because everybody's going to be following this Jew. He doesn't think that Jesus was a proper Jew. He doesn't think Paul was a proper Jew. He doesn't think any of the New Testament writers were Jews, as I already stated. So this idea is starting to fall flat on its face, because most of the rabbis seem to say, no, Edom is actually the Christian civilization of Europe, not some indigenous pre-Christian pagan people that they don't care about. The Christian civilization, the fusion of the Gentile Greco-Roman people and the Judaic religion of the Bible, that is the enemy of the Jews today. That is who is considered Edom. So we can dismiss this whole conspiracy right now if we wanted, but I'm going to press a little bit further. Adam Green also believes that Jews are to blame for multiculturalism, immigration, and many other things, and after watching that short clip of the rabbi, it would be hard not to agree with him to the untrained eye. But if you actually look at history, we'll see that it was the Jews as a people, the Israelites, who were the first hyper-nationalists, the first ethno-nationalists, the first tribalistic people in regard to theology. They were the people who had the ethno-state. They were called xenophobic. In fact, Celsus, Cassius Dio, Diodorus, Tacitus, all have to say very negative things about the Jewish people and their religion, although it sounds like they would be liberals in 2023 if I changed some of the words around. For example, they say that the God of the Jews is mean. They say that the Sabbath resting day is barbaric and unheard of. They say that the xenophobia and misandry of the Jews almost caused their destruction at the hands of the Greeks and the Romans. So which one is it? Are the Jews fomenting multiculturalism? Did they invent this and everybody was living peacefully in their own ethno-states for most of history? No. Because if you look at the Roman civilization, it was the Roman Empire, both pagan and later Christian, that was the first multicultural area, at least in the Mediterranean or the Old World. They accepted people from all kinds of cultures and walks of life as long as they adhered to, in the pagan times, admit that Caesar is your leader, and admit that even though there are many gods, you will respect the Roman pantheon. And then in the Christian period, the Roman Empire was, you have to follow Orthodox Christianity. Then we don't care what language you speak, we don't care where you're living, whether you're in Libya or Carthage or Egypt or Anatolia, or whether you're in Greece or southern Italy, as long as you are a part of this culture and you respect the religion of this culture, which is Orthodox Christianity. So, as we can see, the multiculturalism is not something that was invented in the 21st century by some coping rabbis who are trying to make it look like they have been victorious over Edom. That's historically illiterate. It was the Jews who were the ethno-nationalists. So, Adam, if you want to preserve your people in a constricted ethno-state, I hate to break it to you, but you would technically be a Jew according to your own conspiracy. Like, you're Jewish, buddy boy. This is coming from someone with, like, the most Jewish nose on the internet. I mean, come on, man. You're saying, I want an ethno-state, I want to defend my people. You wouldn't know what your people were if it weren't for the Protestant Reformation in the first place. And the Protestant Reformation, flawed as it was a return to the Hebraic nature of the Bible for many of them. Not for Martin Luther, but for many of the other ones. There were Judaizers like Andreas Karlstadt, and many of the other reformers were trying to go back to the Jewish identity of the Bible. Of course, they didn't do any of the Jewish law, so you ended up with a very shallow, kind of empty religion because they got rid of the Greek and the Roman parts of the religion. So we're not going to do those rituals, but we're also not going to do the Jewish stuff either. So I don't understand. But they did try to move closer to a Judaic angle. Many of the reformers did. And the reformers were the ones who invented ethno-nationalism. They wanted their own nations for their own ethnic people, based on linguistics or culture, not really genetics at that time period. And so in the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation, we see the first ethno-states start to appear. Then in secularism, we also simultaneously see the ethno-states start to appear. So it was actually the Christian Empire and the pagans who didn't really care about ethno-states for most of history. The Orthodox didn't really care, and it was actually ethno-nationalism that kind of tore apart part of the Byzantine fabric closer to the end of its lifeline. And the Roman Catholics certainly didn't care because they wanted one large universal civilization with everybody being a Roman Catholic, clearly. It was actually the reformers who were trying to be more Jewish that gave us ethno-states. So Adam, you're wrong that the Jews invented multiculturalism. They had wanted a state for the past 2,000 years, they couldn't get it, so they suffered with what they could. It was the Christian Roman civilization that did multiculturalism. Not the Jews, not the Protestants who were trying to mimic the Jews and did their own ethno-states. So the more Jewish view is to have an ethno-state. The more Roman view is to have a multicultural empire. So if you have a problem with immigration and multiculturalism, don't LARP as a pagan, because the pagans were not these tribalistic ethno-state people. They were conquered by better pagans who were multicultural empire builders, the Romans. So that's a complete destruction of that point of view, because historically, as I said, the Jews were the people inventing the ethno-state. So if you're going to hold to that, you're either a Protestant or you're a Jew, because otherwise there's no point in having an ethno-state. There's no basis for it outside of the religion that was looked down upon by the pagan civilizations. Second of all, we need to get to the obvious topic here, which is, despite Tovia Singer, Rabbi Mizrahi, and all these other people, Judaism inventing Christianity has to be the greatest failure of all time. Because within a couple hundred years, they came up with the Judaizing heresy in the Roman system, which was if you try to be a Jew, you try to circumcise and try to obey all the commandments of the Old Testament and live as a Jew, you know, as a Pharisee, as a Jew, that is a heresy called Judaizing. So tell me again, Adam, where's this Jewish conspiracy coming through? Because right now it looks like the Jews give people scripture from the Judaic Bible. The Romans then take it in their completely own direction, outlaw being a Jew, and proceed to destroy the Jewish Holy Land, exile the Jews for 2,000 years, and then their descendants in Western Europe would also give the Jews a terrible run for their money for the next few centuries. How is this working out for the Jews again? How are they destroying Europe? It takes 1,950 years for this conspiracy to go into play, for finally the Jews are in a place of power where they can bring in random immigrants from parts of Africa and the Middle East. That's the grand plan. Let's make these people in Europe the most hostile religion to Judaism of all time and see what happens. Tovia Singer is correct. The other rabbis are not correct. Well, the ones who agree with him are correct. I mean, the other ones are not. Christmas and Christianity is not a Torah victory. Okay, Christianity was never interpreted as a Torah victory. It is seen as a failure in Judaism. It's seen as blasphemy in Judaism. It is their greatest enemy and is their greatest desire to destroy Christianity. They don't care what atheists are doing in France. They want to destroy the entire Christian system. Well, they're not going to, but they want to LARP as though they're destroying the entire Christian system. And that is the end point of this whole rabbinic fantasizing about destroying Edom. It's Christianity. It's the cross. That's what they want to eradicate. Okay? They don't care about what random indigenous people in the north of Denmark are doing if they're not adhering to a united Christendom. Christendom invented Europe. Without Christianity, there was no concept of a united Europe, because the Roman Empire, half its population were from North Africa and the Middle East. That's not Europe. Okay? It was after the rise of Islam when Christianity became synonymous with European, because non-Europeans were usually not Christians anymore after the rise of Islam, that the united idea of Europe came to be. So hating upon Europe, hating upon Edom, can only mean hating upon Christianity. If you're starting off with the presupposition that Christianity is false and bad, then you would have to admit that the Roman and European elements of Christianity are why it's bad, not the Jewish elements. There aren't that many Jewish elements in Christianity today. Okay, we have the Bible, that's the core. That's the backbone of the Christian religion, the scripture. But the actual heart and soul of the Christian religion all comes from Roman and Greek philosophy. So you would have to admit that the European elements of Christianity are why you don't like it, Adam Green. If Christianity destroyed Europe, it's the European Western philosophy that destroyed Europe within Christianity, not the Judaic elements. Right, the Bible invented patriarchy. The pagans didn't believe in patriarchy. They bowed down to female deities. Now, they may have treated some treated women as sex slaves, some treated them as goddesses. There was no uniform. The pagans were uncivilized in many areas, savages, yes, violent, aggressive, sure, but there was not an organized system of patriarchy. The Bible invented it. Is patriarchy bad now, Adam? Is feminism working out for the West? Or is that also a Jewish conspiracy? The Jews invent patriarchy and then they also invent feminism. So which one is it? Because those things are the exact opposite. Okay, all the Semitic elements of the Bible are the ones that you should keep. Okay, the Bible does not teach anything bad or wrong, morally. The Bible is a saving grace to what was way too much mental masturbation in Western philosophy. So Adam, again, the presupposition of is Christianity false, then it's your own ancestors, the Europeans, who made it that way, not the actual Bible, which gives us nothing but good benefits. So